I'm actually here to talk to you about obviously the third dimension that was analysed in depth by the OECD review team. I have to say I'm standing in a little bit as well for Louise Kempton, who has been the principal author of the section of the report on this matter. So the comments here would reflect Louise's views, but also those of the entire panel. So the starting point for this, obviously there was a starting point. The HEInnovate structure and review process has key criteria for measuring impact. There they are listed above you, and obviously includes areas such as knowledge exchange and collaboration, impact of startup support, etc. But we didn't limit the analysis to that. It felt it was very important to also look at aspects of regional, national impact and also sectoral issues in relation to impact, particularly in the context of the strategic dialogue process, compacts being developed with higher education institutions, and also trying to get an understanding of what the real impact in terms of economic, social and indeed cultural that the overall higher education sector could provide. So some of the overall findings. First up, there are many examples of innovative and impactful activities taking place in Irish HEIs. In fact, there was a lot of things going on that we didn't know about, and I thought I knew a lot about the higher education system, but I can assure you I didn't, because obviously there's quite a lot more that was going on that we only could find out by actually having the in-depth discussions that Andrea talked about with the 400 people that we met during the course of the visits. There was a problem though, and that is the sector as a whole, and indeed individual institutions, are not very effective at telling their story or making a case. And this is creating a problem, particularly when you're competing for funding with other state agencies such as the HSE, Department of Health, Department of Jobs, Enterprise Innovation. Whoops, I shouldn't have said that, but I suppose I'm here as part of the HEA and the DS. But on this front, I suppose we will be in unison with DEGI. We'll certainly join up with them. The other comment I would say to you is there were numerous sources of information, but they're not being translated very effectively into terms of actual impacts. And what we mean here is wonderful data sets are available, none more so than in the HEA itself. And the reality though is, when it comes to measuring impact, we haven't got a clear understanding what we really want to measure, or what the range of measures are to be. The other comment is the HEI has demonstrated a very wide understanding, and an even wider understanding of all aspects of impact across the three main mission areas, and the mission areas being education, research and engagement. And that was very, very good to see, because their engagement activities were very pronounced, not just within the organisations, but were also credited highly by external agencies who work with them, including local government agencies and national government agencies. Now this is one, and don't shoot the messenger here, I know Kathy's going to give out to me about this one, but there is a little comment, I suppose, did come up, and that was sometimes the reporting processes for, I suppose, funding from, or funding provided to HEIs by agencies such as ourselves, HEA included, maybe the reporting processes can sometimes be often highly onerous and indeed in some cases disproportionate. I suppose the message we have to take back from the HEIs we visited, and I suppose something we do have to look at collectively. In terms of regional and national impact, fair to say two things here. One, HEIs in Ireland have a disproportionately high level of economic output relative to the size of this sector. And the other comment is HEIs provide a very, very strong platform and network, not just for themselves, but also for others within the region in terms of impact. So they can provide a platform for local government agencies, they can provide a platform for business and industry, they can provide a platform for FDIs and the larger state agencies. So that's quite important. But when you consider about the impact that the HEIs actually have, I suppose then the next thing that came up was the concern, well, you know, reductions in funding for higher education could have a far greater impact on the economy, not just the real value in terms of the money. And that's something that people need to consider, I suppose, very carefully, and I think Helena referenced it earlier on today. Other comments. HEIs in institutionally thin places, and I suppose here we're talking about in the regions, the extreme regions. They're not only very important in terms of economic and social impact, but they're also important in terms of the fact that they can often be one of the largest employers, and indeed one of the largest purchasers of goods and supplies, etc. That has to be kept in mind. Their expertise obviously is embedded within local and regional development, but the question again came up, about the balance between the focus on STEM and the balance in the arts and humanities in relation to entrepreneurial education and also research and development activities. Moving on to the knowledge exchange areas, this is for the HEIs themselves. Within that, all the HEIs we observed carried out regular monitoring and evaluation of their knowledge exchange activities. And this included things like measuring the number of startups, spin-offs, patents, new research ideas and research relationships. It also included surveys of participant satisfaction, and it monitored the level of jobs creation in some instances, and also produced what we call knowledge exchange, routes within their regions. The other comment, I suppose, is that the level of monitoring and range of measures was relatively consistent, and a good reason for this was probably because a lot of the monitoring processes were based upon requirements to provide information back to funding agencies. Okay, so there was a certain level of standardisation there. In the areas of entrepreneurial education, the findings cover the following. The impact of entrepreneurial education is usually collected by individual departments and units within the HEIs themselves. There was no central, function collecting that. So individual business departments or business faculties or science or engineering faculties and departments were collecting the information individually rather than being collected at a central location. Several educational initiatives demonstrated improved student performance for those who participated in them. An example of that, actually, the DICE initiative here in DCU. If someone here wants to explain that at some stage, they can. It'd be useful. And the other comment, I suppose, is work placement programs in all HEIs provided evidence of improved student performance on return from their placement period, which is something to bear in mind, particularly when one looks now at the new skills strategy and I suppose the implementation of elements such as the new apprenticeship provision, etc. Findings then in terms of sectoral performance, so this is, I suppose, something that the HEA and indeed the Department of Education Skills need to consider. Ireland has introduced a sector-wide performance management system. Compacts are agreed annually with the higher education institutions. There are common metrics. However, the comment would be, at the moment, the performance evaluation system does not evaluate the economic or social impact of entrepreneurial activities and addresses few of the impact assessment criteria which we actually use as part of the HEInnovate review. So I suppose the question does have to be asked, do we need to produce a new system for measuring this? And I suppose that's something we have to consider. Recommendations in terms of measuring impact. First and foremost, the higher education sector needs to speak as one. And when we say the sector, it means everybody. Universities, institutes of technology, teacher training colleges, Higher Education Authority, Department of Education Skills, and indeed DEGI, who have a very important role to play in research, development and innovation. The other comment, I suppose, is that we also need to produce a sector-wide approach in terms of measuring impact. Okay? Some systems which are available in Europe have been criticised because they're institutionally focused, and it was felt that maybe considering Ireland as being a smallish country with a relatively small number of higher education institutions, that we should consider effectively looking at a sector-wide approach as opposed to individual institutional approach to measuring impact. There were some examples of good practice within the Irish HEIs in terms of measuring impact, primarily in the area of developing case studies to show clearly and clearly demonstrate the impact of specific activities. We'll leave this one except to say one comment I was going to say, I suppose, the communication of impact is important. How you actually get the message across after you know what you want to measure is something that has to be carefully considered. Because impact isn't just about measuring how much you got from your investment, it's also about being able to provide good cases and arguments for continued investment or increased investment or continued focus on either educational or employment creation opportunities. The other comment, I suppose, we do have to give a sales pitch to HEInnovate. Why not? HEInnovate, to be fair, is a tool in its own right that could be used by higher education institutions in Ireland when they are considering their compact development and system performance evaluation with the Higher Education Authority. They could consider using this as a way to actually develop their individual, compact elements. And certainly it would be very useful for HEIs in Ireland to team up and work with HEIs across Europe who are also engaging, with this HEInnovate agenda on entrepreneurial education. So, enhancing impact So there were a few little add-ons that came out of this approach. And one of them was this. It was strongly felt by the panel that visited that there should be a front door, a single door if you like. Now whether that's a single door for the whole sector, or individual sectors, or individual institutions, but there needs to be one clear pathway into a HEI to connect it with its external engagement partners. That was felt very strongly. That was something that maybe was missing, and it certainly, if it was present, it would certainly enhance the impact capability of the higher education institutions concerned. Second comment, the concept of shared facilities and joint ownership between local groups, regional authorities, social partners, or indeed business partners could also be considered as a way of promoting and strengthening and deepening engagement. And don't forget that HEIs, to be fair, we probably have, even though our infrastructure has been weakened in the last number of years due to a reduction in capital investment, we still probably have some of the nicest capital infrastructure available within the state, within Ireland, which could be put to better use, potentially, in slacker times, if that makes sense. Further comments in relation to enhancing impact. This one is a specific recommendation, I suppose, from Louise, who has a knowledge of multidisciplinary and cross-disciplinary projects. And in the UK, they use what is known as sandpits. These are 4 to 5 day seminar events where people are taken away somewhere, locked away, 20 or 30 of them across different disciplines, different expertise from business industry, from higher education institutions. A bit like a hackathon for academics from different disciplines, but they're asked to work together. And effectively what comes out of this, I suppose, are solutions to specific problems, which actually then would be funded and brought forward as collective initiatives and ideas. So it's just something to look at. And if you want further information on it, we can get a website data for you. There should be a more joined-up approach with local enterprise agencies to ensure a seamless support offer for new businesses. I suppose one of the criticisms that we got here, and it came from both sides, from both the state agencies but also from the HEIs, is that maybe is not enough sharing of what I would call the client lists of their partners in engagement. Okay, and that was evident and came across. All right. The other comment, of course, is alumni networks, which work extremely well, particularly in Northern America. We need to grow these and improve them in terms of their ability not just to provide funding, but to provide contacts, engagement networks, and create further impactful links. So for us, the next steps, what are they? What should we consider? I suppose the big thing, and certainly this is something that the HEA and I know the DES are considering, is how do you develop a sector-wide approach to assessing the impact of HEIs in their 3 core mission areas, being teaching and learning, research, development, innovation, and engagement both in economic but also in societal activities. Before you start off, you have to try and understand a few things, and I'm not going to spoil the rest of the discussion because I know Paul is going to be the prophet here. He's going to maybe give us some guidance on this. But the first thing you have to do is to understand what you want to measure and why you're measuring your impact. Okay, that's the first thing. This has been said a few times today, but there isn't a one-size-fits-all in terms of impact. It just isn't there. They're not there. The reality is you have multidisciplines in operation in HEIs. You have different types of partners that you're engaging with. You've also got different types of engagement that you want to measure in terms of societal impact or economic impacts. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. The discussion as to whether you can have a linear model which is based on inputs yielding outputs, or whether you should look at non-linear models also has to be considered. And then you have to understand that there's got to be more than just quantitative data, there has to be qualitative data as well. And I suppose what we would hope is that over time we would produce templates and good practice guidelines for the HEIs and indeed for the sector as a whole to enable us to create a better impact profile for these HEIs going forward. What's being done at the moment is I can tell you that the HEA are hoping to establish a working group of stakeholders to actually look at impact assessment models which will be relevant to system performance, the system performance framework. I know that within the Department of Education and Skills there's also consideration in relation to the potential to create case studies that will help them show and, if you like, showcase, I should say, the impact of HEIs, particularly in relation to enterprise job creation and indeed other societal benefits. And I'm also delighted that Dennis last week announced that the EU Commission are investigating the funding of a study on potential impact models. And I suppose to say, Dennis, there's no free lunch or cups of tea. If there's any spare money at all, we'd be delighted to help you invest it in these impact models. And that's really all I have to say. And we'll take questions later on after Paul. Thank you very much.